Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Momentum's Exo Customer Forum for November 2022. My name is Al Emery, Managing Director at Momentum Software Solutions, and I'm emceeing Momentum's event this morning. So just a few housekeeping issues. If you can move to that slide, please, Morgan. If you haven't been with us on a Teams webinar before, we just ask you to be aware of a couple of housekeeping things that help us move things along smoothly. So please mute your microphone. That just helps us prevent background noise coming through the presentation. And feel free to ask questions at any time throughout this morning's event, either via the chat box where you can just type your question in, or use the little raise your hand icon. There's also a question and answer chat available in Teams now. And also we are recording this webinar, and we'll be sending a recording out to everybody that has registered so that you can share it with your team at a later time. So the agenda for this morning, and we're going for I think an hour and a half, is an update from me about what we've been doing at Momentum to get better. We also have some guest speakers today. So we have Madaleen Bothma, Product Manager at MYOB, who will be providing you with an update on MYOB news in general, and particularly product update relating to the Exo suite. We'll also be introducing you to our Service Delivery Manager, Ian Dunn, who's been with us a number of months now, and he's going to give you an update on how we go about delivering our services to customers. We then have a senior consultant, Jennifer Glisson, who's going to be running a training session on a few key areas of Exo that you may or may not be familiar with. We found even some of our longer term customers weren't aware of a few of these things. So I'm sure you'll get value from Jennifer's session. Moving on from that, we have David Wallace, our Customer Success Manager, and David's going to be taking you through what we think good practice looks like from a CRM perspective. We'll introduce you to our Exo consulting team. We're then going to have a chat to one of our existing customers, VSI, who have recently moved across from Exo Payroll to Advanced Cloud Payroll. So that will be an interesting conversation. Data security, cyber security is quite topical lately. So we have Grant McIntyre, Director at Secure ISS, who will be giving us a presentation about that. Then we have Mark Stafford from Trailed giving us a presentation on their accounts payable and fraud prevention solution that integrates with Exo. And lastly, questions and answers. So packed agenda, we'll move through things quite quickly. So a very quick update for you on what Momentum has been up to. So Momentum is very much a growing business. We have grown our number of customers to over 250 businesses around Queensland and Australia more generally, and a couple overseas. So we have built our team accordingly. We also, having grown quite a bit, we now have a total team of about 40 people starting to implement, a management structure. So Ian has joined us as Service Delivery Manager, and David Wallace joined our team as Customer Success Manager. So I'll explain to you what their roles are as we go through today's session. We've completed more than 30 ERP implementations in the last 12 months, which is a high run rate of ERP projects. Whilst we've been doing that, we've also improved our manufacturing and construction expertise, both internally and our resources, because those are two key markets that MYOB and Momentum focus on, and a lot of related industries around that. Increased our total consulting team to over 30 people. We launched the MYOB Advanced Bootcamp, which is an online learning management system for MYOB Advanced. where customers can do self-paced learning and training on using the MYOB Advanced platform. And particularly kept our focus very much on customer experience with our customer success catch-up. So those are really planning and strategy sessions that we have with customers on where are you at with your business, what plans or changes or goals are happening in the next 12 months or longer, and how can we help you achieve those goals. We like to celebrate customer anniversaries, so we do that every month. And we spend a considerable amount of time and effort making sure that we are sharing knowledge internally, so that our consulting team have a pretty even mix of knowledge across the various software products and modules that we support. We celebrated our 15th year in business, which was great, and grew by 15 people. So we employed 15 new people in the last 12 months. So a lot of growth and focus happening in Momentum. Next 12 months, largely more of the same. So we obviously continuing to improve the experience for our Exo customers. That is done in a number of ways. Upgrades is certainly a key one. MYOB release new versions with new features. In addition to new features, there's compatibility with the various Microsoft products that you need to stay compatible with, be that Windows Server, SQL Server, Office, Outlook. So upgrades are important just from a compatibility perspective, as well as resolving any annoying defects. Enhancing what we can do to expand the functional footprint of Exo with add-ons that we develop, as well as through the MYOB app marketplace, and continuing to improve our services overall. And in addition to that, looking at cloud options for businesses who are ready to move off on-premise servers. That might be through hosting, and it might be through cloud applications. And so that can include talking to our customers about those options and starting the migration process for those customers who are ready to do so. Next slide, thanks, Morgan. As I mentioned previous slide, we really appreciate customer longevity, and customers for life is one of our core values at Momentum that we talk about all the time. And these are a number of our customers who've celebrated either 5 or 10-year anniversaries as customers of Momentum, and we really appreciate the business. Okay, so that's the intro from me. We now have Madaleen Bothma, Product Manager from MYOB, and she's going to be sharing with you MYOB news and product update. Thanks, Madaleen.
Right, thank you, Al. So firstly, congratulations on 15 years in business, and yeah, great to see the growth for Momentum over the past year as well. So, and I guess on top of that, Al, we really value the relationship that you have with MYOB as well, and helping us understand your customers and some of the challenges that they face. So hi everybody, I'm Madaleen Bothma. I'm a product manager at MYOB. I look after a couple of different products. So I look after Exo employer services and Advanced Payroll as well. Today, I'm also going to provide an update on Exo Business. I'm not the product manager for Exo Business, but Anshu Maharaj was not available today. So I will talk you through some of the changes, and then Anshu was kind enough to do a recording for us of some of those new features that we will be discussing, so you can actually see them in action too. So we'll start off with our product mission for Exo Business, and it's supported by 3 pillars of work. Today, we're going to focus on the customer value adds pillar. So I will talk you through some of the value add enhancements in the recent releases. Next slide, please. Before I jump into the enhancements, we've been advised by Westpac that they deprecated the paper application for bank feeds on the 31st of October. You have had access to online applications for a while, so we don't expect this to have a big impact. Given that the paper onboarding is deprecated, the highlighted section in the bank feeds application form will no longer be visible on the screen. You can use the online application method on the same screen to apply for bank feeds instead. Next one, please. In terms of enhancing user experience, this is a continuous focus for us as a team. And there's two things to call out here. So delivery addresses previously had a 30-character limit, which meant that users could lose a part of an address if it was longer than that. It can now take up to 50 characters, and it will also warn users if this limit is exceeded. The second one there, we've also enhanced the renaming of widgets. This change will ensure that renamed widgets are updated across all menu items so that that name is shared across the system and users can reference it correctly. Next one, please. We've also added a new API endpoints to make it easier to retrieve creditor account details, and this is available already as well in the recent release. Next one, please. This is one of the larger ideas that the team has worked on, and we will look at that in the demo. You now have the capability to add CC and BCC recipients for debtors and job cost invoices. So today, users have to manually identify and type in recipients for invoices and then copy them or blind copy them on emails. With this change, you can now configure it for a debtor invoice, and it will include the listed context on generation. We're going to pass on to a demo that was recorded by Anshu on how this works.
So I'll open the data screen, select cash sales. On the details to tab, we've got David and Tim. I've added them to be CC'd on this email. You could go in and select any of the contexts that are listed against this data or any staff member that you need. For this demo, we'll continue with David and Tim. If I go onto the transactions tab and we select a transaction and click email invoice, this will generate an email with the invoice attached, and we should see David and Tim in the CC field. Now, I didn't add a BCC, but if we did, we would see those email addresses in the BCC field. Now, previously, users would have to remember who to email, know their email addresses, and then come in here and manually type this in. This change would save so much time and make it so much easier for them to be able to email out invoices and ensure that the correct people are informed when email invoices are sent out.
So as you can see from Anshu's demo and the other work we talked about, the emphasis is being placed on enhancing the user experience so that you can utilize the product to improve scenarios within your business. This should make it so much easier to send out invoices and ensure that the right recipients receive them. And you can look out at the release notes for more information around that. At the moment, it's only added to the debtors and job costing module. We look forward to user feedback before extending this to other modules as well. Can we move on to the roadmap? Okay, so ideas form the bulk of the work that's on the roadmap. So we're going to go to the next slide to look at that in more detail. So in terms of what has been done, there was a change in requirements from the ATO, and the team had to pivot and provide an update on consolidated TPAR submissions. Luckily, due to the timing, it wasn't mandatory for this year, but it will be for August 2023. For 2022.2, we focused on operational efficiencies and enhancing the user experience. The final release for 2022 was 2022.3, and it's available already as well. And this will give you access to the changes we covered in this session and additional bug fixes as well. The team is now working towards the first release of next year, which will be in Q1. Thank you. Next slide, please. Now we're going to move on to Exo Employer Services. And next slide. So our statement here is that we need to maintain Exo Employer Services and support existing customers while providing them with pathways to the cloud. And the two pillars here are compliance and digital transformation. So let's have a look at the roadmap. there's an ongoing stream of work to keep Exo ES compliant, stable, and secure. So next year, we've got the regular tax year updates, as well as starting discovery work for the Holidays Act for our New Zealand customers. The one thing that isn't on here that we're working on at the moment is paid family and domestic violence leave for Australia. So this needs to be live by the 1st of February for employers that have 15 or more employees. We're still waiting for clarification on the rate for the leave and exactly how it needs to be reported to the ATO. So as you can appreciate, there's not much time to turn this around. We are, however, targeting this to be available middle January so that you have time to upgrade and do any setup required. And lastly, just before we wrap up, I want to congratulate you all for transitioning to STP Phase 2 this year. We know that it was a big change and there were challenges with the end of year reporting, but we're really pleased that our Exo ES base is now live on STP Phase 2. Great, so thank you very much for your time and I will hand back to Al.
Thanks, Madaleen. Really appreciate the update on how things are progressing with the Exo product and MYOB generally. I'd add that 2020.3 has a couple of extra nice features. One relates to search templates, and search templates really means stock search templates. So in prior versions, if you were searching for items to add to a sales order, for example, you could utilize a stock search template that could filter the items that you're seeing based on various criteria. For example, only show me items that customer has purchased before, or only show me the top 10 or 20 or 50 items that customer normally purchases. That feature has been extended to be available within the CRM quoting module and also the job costing quote module. So if you use that feature now, and it's a somewhat underutilized feature, we think, that's certainly worth looking at when you upgrade to 2022.3. Okay, so next we have Ian Dunn, our Service Delivery Manager, and Ian is going to be presenting to you on our service delivery strategy. Over to you, Ian.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks, Al. As Al mentioned, it's a new role, the Service Delivery Manager role for Momentum. I've been in the role now 4 months. Prior to this, all roads led to Al, and I think he was very happy to get me on board. I think he's now started down the Benjamin Button process of rejuvenation since I've got my feet under the desk. I'll share with you one of the original and first things I noticed about Momentum when I started was the great culture that's here, and that's a credit to Al and Deanne. And it's a very clear indication of why we've got some great consultants and the fact that they are happy and love their jobs here. And it should be a good outcome for our customers having happy consultants. So well done, Al and Deanne. So a little bit about my background. So I've only gone back 18 years. I didn't want to go back any further than that because that gets into Windows 3.1 days, and that could be PTSD for some of the people out there. So yeah, 16 years ago, I joined Toshiba to build a professional services team to install AP and AR software implementations using OCR software to scrape data off hard copy invoices and delivery dockets and pushing it through to CRMs for using the Toshiba print devices as the on-ramps for this. It was put in place to try and offset the sharp decline in print output for the Toshiba print division, which I worked for. But as we all know, that was a decline that was never going to be arrested. So as phase 2, to try and arrest that, I was given the opportunity to build a MSP or an IT full services business within Toshiba. Went really well because we had access to 10,000 print customers across the country. Grew it very quickly to a decent sized customer base of 350 customers. But as COVID hit and nobody went to the office to press the green button on the print devices, there was no longer a need for my staff. They're all taken across into the print division to shore that up. So they sold the business in 2021 during COVID. So I moved on to a smaller IT company, and as you can see there, I transitioned those guys from a 300 customer business with 24 employees from a pay-as-you-go old-fashioned system to a subscription model. Onto the service delivery model. It's a pretty simple one that I've used over the years. It's engage, communicate, respond, and deliver. Now, communication is probably the key one there, and it sort of underpins the first 3: engage, communicate, and respond. So from a momentum point of view, I think engagement starts from the time we as a technical team start to get to know your business, whether it starts at kickoff and scoping. So kickoff to understand the people that are the key stakeholders in your business and how we can deliver exactly what you need. Scoping to understand exactly how your business operates, your workflows, your priorities, and that all folds into giving you a system that is a highly functional Exo or MYOB Advanced system. Communication, crucial again in general, especially for complex implementations or complex ERP systems. It's also super critical for support requests. I think, as you would know, that a good communication model and you as customers understanding where you stand with your support cases is really important. It's something that we're aiming to improve on all the time. And going on from that, even if you've had your system in place, business review engagement as part of the communication area is also something that is really important to constantly review and see if best practice or best operation of your ERP system or payroll system. As we've mentioned before, there's a lot of enhancements that a lot of people may not know about, but we'll cover some of those off today. Respond, very easy. It ties in with communication as well, but there's nothing worse than asking for assistance or a support case or understanding where a project's at and no one's responding. So that's another part of the improvement process that we're working towards. And deliver, that's pretty simple. Deliver on what we on your expectations and what we've promised to deliver. And it's probably the essence of what customer satisfaction is. So if we engage with you, communicate clearly and regularly respond whenever we're called upon to deliver to your expectations, then as Momentum and as customers will have a great working relationship. And that's my goal as service delivery manager. So what are my responsibilities? Well, they're large and varied, which is great, keeps me gainfully employed. So project sponsors is one of my key ones that I've been engaging with users at the moment, so that if there's a project or an implementation going on, that I'm somebody that you can come to as an owner of the business or a senior manager or key stakeholder if there's frustrations with any part of the process, because delivering complex software, it's a bit of a journey, and they're all very different. So often, myself as a circuit breaker for those frustrations is an easy way to keep things flowing and to move things along so that those frustrations are minimized. So please always feel free to engage with me, whether it's implementations or even support cases. Post-implementation reviews is another one of my responsibilities. So a 360-degree view of a project or an implementation. Even if you've had your system for a while, I'm more than happy to engage at any time to do a review of your system or a health check. So please feel free again to engage to do that. And also I work closely with MYOB themselves, so I'm responsible for liaising with the MYOB support team to help them support us so we can then in turn support you guys. So as part of my role to start with Momentum was to get some improvements going. And as you can imagine, over the last 2 years, hiring 15 people in the last 12 months, I should say, we've identified a few areas that can be developed, improved, changed. So these are the areas that we're concentrating on at the moment. So develop processes and structures that can sustain growth. We've noticed that as successful and good as growth is, it can cause some issues with processes and efficiencies. And that's something I'm looking at closely and making changes as we go. We need to build out our consulting team. Currently now, there are a large number of people that we're going to put into a different structure so that they can work more efficiently, turn out the work quickly and with a better quality and a repeatable level of quality that's quite high, so that there's less issues post go live. Grow. So the support team needs to be grown as well, because our success as implementers has also taken on an industry standard where there's a lot of customers coming across over the last 12 months for support. So they've come to Momentum after having their implementation done, and we're looking at supporting those guys moving forward. So we're looking at a better structure for our support team to take, again, the pressure off those guys and get a quicker and more accurate response for all our customers. and improve. Customer satisfaction will come from everything that we've discussed above there, which is develop, build and grow. Customer satisfaction, clearly, it's all about what we can deliver for you guys. And it's probably the easiest part to improve with good communication, because that underpins most of what we do. If you know where we're at in any step of the process, frustration levels stay down. So communication is a key. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm reviewing and aiming to improve Momentum technical structures and processes, reviewing all technical operations, and it's a reasonably sized job, but there's a lot of small changes that we've made so far that we think will benefit you, our customers, initially, and more to come in the new year. So feel free to reach out to me individually or through questions at any point now if you want, but certainly come back to me directly for any issues that you're outstanding. If you've got any projects that you need to reinvigorate, or if you want a health check or a review done of your system, happy to engage at any point in time with you guys. Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Ian. Great summary, and certainly making a big difference to Momentum already, having you part of the team and leading the team. So next we have our Exo training session, and I'd like to introduce to you all Jennifer Glisson, who is one of our senior Exo consultants and also accountant by background. So Jennifer is going to take you through a number of features of Exo, some new, some not so new, but that you may not be familiar with. So over to you, Jen. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. Good morning, everybody. Today's Exo session is going to be about back to basics. I want to cover some functionality of Exo that you may or may not know about, or you may not be using fully. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. And hopefully you can all see that now. Okay. So first of all, when you first open Exo, you may find that the screen is not optimal to what you want it to look like. I can see here this side of it's a bit squished up. I can't see all the options on the left-hand side. So I can resize that. What happens when you log in the next day? You've got to do it again. But what we can actually do, once we set that up to how we want it, if we go up to the very top line, right click, you'll see there's an option for form position, and we can click on save. So that means next time we log in, it's going to look like that, and we don't have to keep changing it. And that's the same for any other screen that you may open, say, for example, your debtors screen and so forth. You've got the same option with your form position. You'll see there as well, there's a restore. So there's always an undo button if you don't get it right the first time. Next, let's have a look at what we've got on the left-hand side and the right-hand side of our main screens. You'll see here on the right-hand side, we've got, it says recent items. So what this is showing us is the accounts and some transactions that we've opened today. We can also see previous days if we've done anything on previous days. So if I've been looking at this customer here and I want to quickly go back to that customer, I can just double click there and it will take me to that customer's account. I don't have to go through the menu, so it's a nice quick shortcut. On the left-hand side, we've got similar. We've got recent actions. So instead of being recent accounts that we may have opened, these will be recent processes that we've done. For example, we've looked at the GL trial balance tree, or we've run a report, etc. So again, another good shortcut way to get to transactions that you may be using on a regular basis. Our favourite items is very similar as well, except these are the commonly used ones. So you may not use them every day, but you may use them much more regularly than other processes. So again, it's just a matter of double clicking to take you to that screen. In the third section, we've got our favourite reports. So these are our most commonly used reports. So if this is something that you're doing on a regular basis, again, you don't have to go through all the report menu options to find it. It's quite easy just to double click and find that report. You may notice up the top we've got a search button. So this search button here will actually search all of the menu options within Exo. So if I type in debtor, you'll see there I've got transactions, I've got account screens, I've got reports, anything that's got the word debtor in it. So that's a really good way to find things rather than have to traipse through menus to try and find what you're looking for. So some of you may not want this. You can unpin it if you like. So we've got a little pin at the top, and you'll see there as I move the mouse away, it's now hidden there. I can bring it back just by pinning it again. A relatively new function that you'll find in versions 2021 onwards is message and disconnect users. So if I click on this one here, it opens a new screen, and I can see there that currently there are 2 users logged into Exo. If I click on new, you'll see there I've got 3 options for actions. I can request a logout, force a logout, or message only. So if I do a message only, this might be for things such as you want to just let people know that it's month end today, close off is 5 o'clock, make sure you get all of your transactions in. Or you might be looking to find somebody may have a locked record and you need to get that person to jump out of there and you're not sure who it is. So it's not replacing Teams or anything, but it's good for messages relating to Exo. So we can just type in here, reminder, month end today, and I can send that message. So I've got somebody logged in over here. That message will pop up shortly. There we go. So that person being logged in will see that message. But if there are other people that aren't logged in at the time, the next time they do log in, they will see that message. So that's quite handy there. I can complete that, that's done. The other options is we've got request logout and force logout. So the request logout could just basically asks people to log out. And you'll see there that there's a time message. So you might say, please log out by such and such a time, or please log out within the next 5 minutes. So again, we can send a message. And then that again will show up. If we wanted to force, just go no, because I don't want them to close out. So you see there it's asking them to log out. If, for example, this person's gone home or they've gone out to lunch and I need to do something, I need to log them out, I need to use their license, I can just come up here and disconnect the user. So that's a great, relatively new feature. Oh, and it's telling us they're gone, killed their session. One thing is, though, it's not obviously not available to everybody. We don't want that. So you'll notice in the staff setup form that there's a new option that we need to tick on called can disconnect users. So you obviously want to be very careful who you would give that to, but you can see that there are definitely some values in sending messages as well as forcing logouts. The next thing I'd like to look at today is the Exo grid. So most of you will be familiar with the Exo grid. I'm sure we've all used it to cut and paste details into Excel. You've got your right click, copy to clipboard, but there's also a number of other functions within the Exo grid. So if I right click, you can see there I can select visible columns. I can show or hide columns, I can resize the columns, and I can also rearrange the order. So if I select visible columns, you can see there what's ticked on is obviously showing, what's not ticked is not showing. So for example, for me, I might like to see age, I might like to see the batch number because I do banking batches, the GL batch, and the exchange rate because I'm looking at I've got foreign currency debtors. So if I scroll across, you can see I've now got those columns there. So you'll notice that there are a number of columns there, but say, for example, there is a column that you want to see on there, just get in touch with support. It's possible that we can add it. Some we can, some we can't, but just let us know and we'll see what we can do. Now, I want to see that exchange rate over here, so I can move that if I like. I can expand columns, I can shrink columns, I can sort, I can do whatever I sort of want there. Once I've decided that that's how I want it all to look, I can right click and save the column settings. The save column settings is user specific. So I've done that to my Exo screen, but somebody else in my organisation, they won't see the changes that I've made because it's specific to each user. So this is great because different users may do different functions within the organisation, so they can set it up as they like. Another function in our right-click menu is we've got Find. So if I've got a huge list of transactions there and I'm looking for a specific invoice number, I can just type that in and it'll find it there for me. I don't have to right-click though. I can just go Control F to find that Find function. The other thing I can do with an Exo grid is I can sort. I can sort by amount, I can sort by date, I can sort by transaction number. So again, you've got all of those functionalities there. If I didn't want to sort, if I just wanted to lock that, I could do that and that would stop me from sorting. I set that back to natural order. There we go. And again, like we had the reset button for changing the form position, we also have a reset button here. If we muck it up and we want it back to where it was, we can just restore those default column settings. Okay. Next, I'd like to look at the grid widget. So as you may be aware, there's a number of different widgets in Exo. We have form widgets, pivot widgets, graph widgets, but looking at grids, following on from what we've just looked at, we can add a grid widget. Now, I'll just use this one here as an example, the customer sales history. So when I select a widget, it just pops itself on the screen there. So you can see here how this is a grid. So I can resize my columns, I can move them around, and then I can save them as I want to, copy to clipboard, etc. Same kind of deal. Now, if this is something that I want permanently to see on my screen, if I click on the top purple button and just move it slightly, you'll see I'll get this docking control here. Now I can put it to the top of the screen, the right of the screen, left of the screen, bottom of the screen, or I can throw it into the middle, which will actually create another tab for me. I can move that, oh, very sensitive there, isn't it? Move that tab into the middle, and there we go. So you can see that you can do exactly the same with widgets if they're a grid. One thing just on the widgets, this is a customer sales history. So I'd like to be able to drill down to those. If I check the SQL, I can click the grid and say, I want to be able to drill down to the debtors if I double click on that. So there we go. Okay. And if I want to save that, I just click on the save button here, give it a name, and then that's there for next time when I come. I can move that around so that my sales workflow is my main screen there. Okay, lastly, I'd just like to go through one of my favourites as an accountant. I love this screen. It's called the GL trial balance tree. First of all, when we open the GL trial balance tree, we want to make sure that it's balanced down in the right-hand corner here. This basically means that all of our financial transactions that are in Exo are all balanced, and most of the time they are. There may be the odd occasion where perhaps there's an invalid GL account or something's gone wrong at year-end rollover or whatever the reason. So if you see that out of balance by more than a couple of cents, which is just rounding, please let us know and we can have a look at that for you and get that sorted. So you'll see here looking at the options, I can view the trial balance, which is all of my accounts, or I may just view the profit and loss, and I click on load to refresh that screen, or I might just want to view the balance sheet. I go back to profit and loss. You'll see here up the top, I've got the options to expand all. So if I click on expand all, I can see all of the accounts that make up those different account groups, and then I can collapse them. Now, whatever I see on the screen there, we've got a grid here as well. We've only got the option to copy to clipboard on this one though, so it's not as functional obviously, but whatever we put on that screen, we can then see. Now, if I wanted to look at year to date, or I wanted to do an age, so for example, I might want to look at my financial year, just for my profit and loss, what's happened in this current financial year. You'll see that on the right-hand side, these options became available. So I can use sub-accounts. So expand all. Now I'm not just seeing sales and depreciation, I'm seeing all the sub-accounts related to those. I can hide zero balances, etc. If I just wanted to see it by branch, again, I can do that as well. If you're using consolidations and you're in a consolidated company file, then you would have the option to just look at it by a particular company as well. Once I've got this screen here, if I wanted to have a look at, well, what is actually in that account, I can see the transactions. And you'll see there that it's kept the criteria that I had in the trial balance tree. So I've got November to July, my sub-account electrical, and my branch being Sydney. So that's all I really wanted to cover today. So hopefully everyone got a tip or two out of that. And thank you for your time. And if you've got any questions, please reach out to the support team and we're happy to help.
Thanks, Jen. Great session. I think all of those are really worthwhile things to make a note of if you weren't already aware of them, particularly the messaging and disconnecting users, which is somewhat new. Customers of ours that use our easy maintenance module did have the ability to disconnect users, but it was a bit more of a blunt instrument. There was no message or warning, just kick them out. And also quite useful to use that messaging if, for example, you need to do a server reboot, or even if you're doing an upgrade of Exo, because people need to log out in order for an upgrade to work correctly. So some really nice things covered there. So next we have David Wallace, our customer success manager, and David is going to be talking to you about best practice CRM. Over to you, David.
Morning, everyone. Just one sec, I'll get my camera turned on here. Yes, hope everyone's well. CRM, some of you may already be experiencing CRM, thinking about experiencing CRM, implementing it, and maybe have never even thought about it. The presentation that I've prepared today should hopefully give some pointers to those who are already in using CRM, and pointers for those who are thinking about using CRM. CRM, customer relationship management, is what the acronym's for. It has been extended in recent years to be XRM, meaning could be supplier relationship management, employee relationship management. I'm going to focus on the customer relationship management functionality in today's presentation. It's not a one-size-fits-all type of business functionality. It's very different. It's very broad. It has certain modules. No matter which system you choose, they all come with varying modules to satisfy various needs. So someone who's like a fast-moving consumer goods company would have a very different need to a service organization or a jobs-based organization where you're building maybe construction or boats or something like that. And once again, I hope my presentation can sort of join a common denominator as the principles for best practice for CRM. Moving on, thanks. So a little bit of history, which will help explain the future slides. So in the beginning, for those of you who are as grey and as balding as I am, you may remember the Kalamazoo cards that sat in either the general manager or the sales rep's boot or on the back seat, which basically had a card for each of their customers. They would update that card every visit, tuck it back in the box, and goes back in the boot of the car. We had some software that came in the, I'm going to say early 90s, Acton Goldmine were some of the first players in the market, and we remember our Palm Pilots or PDAs from those days as well. For those who might have been using them, they weren't Wi-Fi. They had to be synced with USB cables back to your desktop. So they were very unsynchronized and very offline. The points to note there, we had unsecure records. Generally, we lost our data if we lost staff. The records would walk out the door with that staff. It was very hard to control that. There was little or no collaboration or connectivity back to the office for the field person or for anyone who was managing customers, taking customer inquiries or visiting customers. You had to phone in an order. You had to go back to the office if you didn't have that particular brochure or catalogue in your boot. You had little or no analysis. There was no connection to your ERP system or your sales systems. Generally speaking, you would get a monthly sales report in hard copy, and you would carry that around with you and understand where your customers' sales were off that report. Zero tracking of opportunities or campaigns, zero tracking of prospects, and zero tracking of sales objectives and projections, and fundamentally zero automation was available to us back then. Next slide, please, Morgan. It was very much centered around the activities of a sales rep or a general manager, a record of that person's last visit with a customer. What did you discuss? What action items? There was no to-do list really that sort of sat across all of the customers in your remit or your responsibility. Really the information was only accessible if you have the key to the boot of the car where those records were stored. So it was very inaccessible. Next one, Morgan. CRM then in the sort of late 90s and into the early 2000s, it evolved, but many of my previous clients used to use it as a big stick, and it was for the benefit of a sales manager who may report to someone else. It was based around, how many sales calls did you achieve a day, and you were expected to achieve 6 sales calls and maybe 1 day off the road for admin, whatever. There was a KPI that was purely centered around quantitative or timesheet type data. It really didn't do much to improve the benefit on sales. It was more of a burden on the sales team member. So many of my former clients had sales team sitting at the kitchen table each night updating their sales calls for the day because they were too busy moving through traffic to update them during the day. There was no real benefit to that end user. As I said, it was more of a big stick, more of a timesheeting system. And there was no real focus on the quality of a sales call. It really only focused on the quantitative measures of a sales call. And I want people to sort of dwell on that idea of having qualitative analysis if you haven't already considered that for your existing systems. Move on, Morgan, thanks. It was definitely focused on the account these systems were focused on the account rather than the contacts or the people that were employed at the account. But as I'll make my point known in future slides or slides coming up, is CRM is a very personal thing. It's about relating with people, not necessarily the account or the company. There was no connection to marketing activity. So if a campaign was released, there was very little way of analysing the success of that campaign to certain sections of your customer base or your product base. There was little collaboration across the sales force. It was generally territorial silos. So there wasn't much sharing of information even within a sales force or within the organization itself. If a customer had made a positive or a negative comment at a recent sales call, it was very rare that feedback would get back to the office per se, the management per se, and that management or the office was unable to respond or react to that feedback. There was definitely no electronic documents, particularly standard documents, approved documents, coming from a managed document library to be able to send out or distribute to those customers at that sales call at their request. And there was no means, as I said, there was no means of logging inquiries. And you really couldn't see if those inquiries or that feedback, otherwise now known as cases, had been closed out with satisfaction. And then we had this. We had, for those of you who are once again my age, we had 2 volumes of the yellow pages sitting underneath the phone in the kitchen or in a cupboard in the kitchen. And that was just for Brisbane per se. If we wanted to find a phone number in Sydney, we'd be trotting off down to the post office or the GPO in the centre of Brisbane to go and borrow one of those phone books if you could find it. And you certainly couldn't go online. You certainly had to ring a lot of numbers to find out if they stocked that part, the price of the part for your Go-Go mobile, as for those of you who remember that commercial there in the bottom left corner. Obviously, without saying too much, we've evolved into a much different world with social media and search engines and search engine optimization. And CRM had to adapt to that as well. And most good systems these days, advanced, etc., have that adaptation and can accommodate the electronic world that we live in today. Thanks, Morgan. CRM modeling is effectively in three pillars, or there are 3, let's call it standards of functionality that comes with all modern CRM systems today and should be considered by all companies who are intending to implement CRM. The first model, or the first pillar, is operational CRM. Fundamentally, it streamlines the business processes with automation for the sales department, the marketing department, and your customer service or technical support, or any other customer-facing division within your organization or individuals within your organization, depending on how big you are. And I'm sorry if I speak in terms of big business here, but it is scalable. Everything I'm saying is scalable and applicable to no matter how small or large your organization is. I'll just quickly go. Sales automation obviously is setting the standard within an organization to acquire new customers and managing existing customers. It generally means you will include in your CRM system sales modules like lead management, contact management, quote to order management, and if you're very sophisticated, Salesforce forecasting with CRM. Marketing automation optimizes the way that we offer our products and the way that we acquire our customers, attract new leads, or promote new products or promote existing products, seasonal products, etc. And that can be automated within modern CRM systems. And service automation, that's more about responding to client requests, potential client requests, potential customer requests to fix issues, or respond to, say, even a request for technical support or additional information about a particular products and product guides, whatever the case may be. Those types of queries can also be automated, particularly if they come in from your websites. They can be routed to various based on case type. They can be routed to various responders within your team who specialize in those responses for those cases. Morgan? Cheers. The second functionality in core CRM is the analytical CRM. It's having the ability to display information through dashboards, scorecards, etc., to be able to analyze, your sales versus budget, sales versus sales forecasts, or sales projections, or even territory targets. Your sales versus last year, obviously analyzing growth, whether it be by product, by customer, by month. You can analyze product or customer ordering patterns, margins, discounts, your trade spends, all of those other metrics that you may want to measure inside your business to analyze sales and or CRM activity and or the success of marketing activity. Can, inside most modern CRMs these days, you can publish that through very user-friendly and effective scorecards and dashboards. which drives traffic to use CRM, because that's where your team goes to acquire that information, and generally that is the first driver of traffic to CRM, and I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. But it's a critical part to have the analysis and the information that wasn't available in the beginning slides that I started with. That wasn't available back then, but in this electronic world, in this cloud world, in this data warehouse world, it's all very achievable. And it also allows us to analyze how we use CRM and to continuously improve CRM within our organization, and obviously create additional key performance indicators as and when required, and basically be able to pull levers within the business to react to change or evolution. Morgan, cheers. The third part is collaborative CRM. Pardon my silly photo there, but you get the message. It's about sharing customer information among various business units, among various individuals within your business. Once again, it doesn't matter how small your business is, sharing information is important. And that information can be shared effectively. It can be controlled so that the communication is appropriate and meets your policies. For example, if you're one of my former clients loves CRM because their technical support department was in Brisbane. A customer in Perth was about to be visited by a sales rep. The sales rep in their pre-call prep would look down at their iPad or their laptop and see that 10 minutes ago that customer had logged a technical support, would walk into the meeting having that knowledge, mention it, and impressing the customer about how connected that business really was, and asked if that customer was satisfied with the response to that support ticket or that technical request, and would be able to follow it up if required. It helps you unite all groups within your organization to achieve that single goal, and that is improved quality customers and improved quality of service, and also obviously with the benefit of growing sales. Yes, Morgan, that was correct. So they're the three main deliverables that should come from CRM. Next slide, please, Morgan. I'm going to go through the 5 significant benefits, and I've touched on some of these, but there is some overlap or there is some differences to be discussed. So the first benefit is, as I mentioned in the previous slide, we de-silo customer teams, we de-silo Salesforce, we collaborate, and those teams effectively are using a single set of data, so therefore you're getting the single source of the truth. You're not relying on emailing spreadsheets around to represent how your business is traveling, and someone's changed it to sort of meet the audience. You're getting it all straight from the horse's mouth and straight out of your collaborated systems. Improved communications, so to be in the know. I mentioned that example earlier of the sales rep walking into the customer in Perth and having knowledge of the technical support. That was without that technical support person creating a phone call. It was inside the customer card, the electronic card that exists in CRM, and everyone's prepared and on the front foot, I guess, rather than being defensive when they communicate with their customers. You can obviously use that information also to trigger workflows and automation, and which is quite beneficial to most businesses. It certainly creates a lean environment if you're not having to double handle things and assigning responsibilities. Thanks, Morgan. And as I mentioned, automation in the previous slide. So we can achieve a great amount of efficiency via automation. Most modern CRM systems these days, the MYOB products all have that, the ability to create workflows, manage that customer evolution would be one example. Case or inquiry management, I mentioned routing certain cases or tickets, whatever you want to call it, inquiries coming from website, routing those to or passing them on to the appropriate people. It might have been an accounts inquiry, for example, someone inquiring about their statement. It could be a product inquiry. It could be an inquiry about where's my order? You know, what's happening with the delivery? So that would go down probably to the warehouse or something like that. And it puts the inquiry into the hands of the best person or best team to respond appropriately to that customer. It can also create planned activities. For example, if you're in a sales call and you had a button that said, you know, this customer inquired about a particular upcoming campaign, that can spawn all sorts of activity from there to say, maybe they require a follow-up meeting. Please send these brochures. Please send this link. Please include them on this mailing list. So you can spawn, you know, hundreds of different follow-up activities just from that one interaction with the customer, purely via workflows and automation. It's just limited to your imagination, quite frankly. Next one. So we obviously, when I was talking earlier about the analytical side of CRM, you can make data-driven decisions out of analysis. This particular dashboard is an existing Momentum client that I've developed. Let's call it their daily sales report. For those of you who followed World Series cricket, I call that graph at the top the worm. It shows them how they're tracking through the month, and then down the bottom it shows them how they're tracking through the month by various dimensions of the business, whether it be channels, product groups, territories or regions, etc. The company had a cracking October, which unfortunately the timing difference, as you can see in those graphs, is causing some issues in their November sales, but it's coming back to fruition. But at least this information is in the hand of the people who are making decisions, and that dashboard is published through their CRM system. More importantly, this is more of a dashboard scorecard. You do want to facilitate the ability to drill to detail, whether you want to get down to a particular customer, particular product. Even some companies have asked, can we get down to the specific invoice when we start at a landing page like this, and we just drill down to detail from there. And then the fifth one, Morgan. Obviously, the main objective of CRM is to meet your sales objectives. And that's about synergizing or connecting your strat plan, your marketing plan, or business plan, both, to your product plan and then to your sales objectives. CRM is more about delivering the tactics to achieve those plans, and it's about identifying success and identifying areas for improvements. It's about allowing management to pull levers or change their tactics, or even go back to the start and review their strategies and their objectives. CRM should and must support that to be an effective system for your business. Okay. This is where the common denominator stuff comes in that I want to talk about, irrespective of how big or small your business is. In my experience in implementing CRM, I've quite a few customers have probably not realized that CRM, and I mentioned it earlier, CRM is not mostly contract, it's contact centric. You know, the contact at your customer account, your business account, they are the decision maker. They consume your marketing, and they can certainly influence your sales objectives. So CRM should primarily focus on managing that relationship with that individuals or teams, which can all be configured in modern CRM systems. They engage in your activities. So when you record a sales call, it's probably mandatory that you should record who you spoke with, who that email came from, and it could be multiple people. The contact lodges an inquiry. That contact is seeking a response, whether it be adverse or not. They're seeking responses to questions. They're reading your marketing material. Sorry about that. They're reading your marketing material and making decisions. A lot of my clients in the past have implemented CRM systems that have focused on integrating their account data from their ERP system. And when I walk in and see how, you know, what information have you got regarding an account, it's generally, regarding a contact, the first thing I see is the email address for the accounts payable person, because that's the email address that's highly likely in ERP. And then the client turns to me and says, well, how do I get contacts in here? I've not had them. I don't have them in my ERP system. Well, one of the strategies is every time you make contact with that account and that contact who you've made contact with, update their details as best you can. And that's a very manual process, but you can also acquire it from web inquiries. Before someone places an inquiry, you can say they've got to fill out their first, last name, phone number, and email address. We've all done it. We're all used to it. But that's another way how you can populate and grow your contacts data. It's
David,
very important. Yeah, sorry, Al.
Sorry, David. Al here. Just conscious we're about 10 minutes over
time. Oh,
so
sorry.
Can I just give you a minute to wrap up?
Yep, sure.
Thank you.
So I can take you through these last slides. Key to successful CRM system. The second one is using the sales funnel to evolve a customer from a lead to a prospect to an account customer. We can move on there, Morgan. Then not only do we want to evolve them through that process, but we want to make our customers, we want to take them from a D customer to an A customer, and that's called promoters, people who will talk highly about our business and their quality customers. And then next slide, please, Morgan. And as I mentioned earlier, the biggest thing that I find is driving users or creating user adoption, giving the users the benefit of using CRM, making their day smarter, easier to achieve, and to monitor their objectives. Morgan. Implementing it in stages. It's too broad to implement in one quick hit. Smaller businesses may opt out of many of the modules, and that's quite understandable. Keep your implementation simple. Maybe start with your data, acquiring account and contact details. Maybe then start with cases so you can deal with customer inquiries appropriately, design them. Then maybe you want to go to activity tracking, such as sales calls, phone calls, emails, etc. And then look at the concepts of storing your documents, managing your opportunities in your pipelines, and then integrating your marketing campaigns into that so it's all one closed circle. Morgan? And that was it. That's all I had. Hope that was okay, Al. Very fast at the end.
Yeah, thanks, David. Sorry for the rush at the end, but great presentation. I think very thorough and a lot of experience with CRM that you have brought to Momentum. And so for customers on the call who are already using Exo CRM, it does many of those things that David has talked about. Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you've had a quick chance to stretch your legs or have a cup of tea. And hopefully you're enjoying the session so far this morning. So next we would like to take the opportunity to put some names to faces and introduce our Exo team to you. And that includes our tech team. So for any of our guys that are on the call, if you wouldn't mind turning your camera on so you can say hi. And our Exo team is made up of Adam McGill, Michelle Sagar, Jen Glisson, Greg Marshall, and Kathy Davis. And those are the guys that you're probably talking to every day, helping you improve your utilization of Exo, deliver new projects, do upgrades, answer support questions, you name it, they do it. And they're ably supported by our tech team, some of whom may be on the call. Steve Ellett, our senior developer, Roderick Rabada, senior developer, Akshat Chaun, who's also a developer with us, and obviously the guys all report into Ian, who you met earlier, and David, who you met earlier. So yeah, really appreciate working with you guys, and hopefully I'm sure our customers are happy with what we do every day, and also take the opportunity to put a face to the name. Thanks, everyone. So next, we're going to have a chat, or I'm going to have a chat with one of our customers, VSI, and Fiona Allen. And Fiona is the payroll and finance manager at VSI. So, morning, Fiona. Can you just unmute yourself and we'll have a chat?
I am. Yes, I'm not real good at this sort of thing yet.
No problem. Yeah, we're not all public speakers by trade. So yeah, we wanted to have a talk to you because it's an interesting journey that VSI have been on with Momentum and are continuing to go on. So firstly, if you could just tell us a little bit about VSI.
Okay, obviously VSI is the wholesale and importer of tiled products. We also are a part of a group. We have a retail group who sell total flooring, so your carpet, timber and tiles. Yeah, we've been around a very long time, and we sort of shrink and then we get bigger and then we shrink around what the market's doing at the time. So yeah, been here a while.
Yeah, very good. And how many employees work in the VSI group?
Across the whole group, we're talking about 40.
Okay, so a reasonable size.
Yes, yes. But there are all in separate branches, so with ABNs and as separate entities, which was a little bit of a challenge in what we wanted to do, which was why we were originally in Exo for the payroll. But we have been able to do branches with Advanced, which has been good. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And how long have you been a client of Momentum for?
Around 10 years.
Right, so quite a while, and running the Exo product, which, as you mentioned, for different companies would probably have been in different files.
Yes, they were. Yeah, yes. So with Advanced, it's all in the one file, but it allows for there to be sub branches, which is great. Yeah. Very
good. And can you tell us how long you were using Exo Payroll for, and were there any other payroll products that you've been aware of?
Well, we were using QuickBooks when I arrived. They'd only had it happening for about 2 years, and so then I find it frustrating, and I've always been a MYOB user, so we switched across to Exo MYOB, and we're using it for around 8 years or so, possibly 10. Time sort of does go blend a bit, but also previous to that I've used several other programs, and doing my CPE to keep my my quals going. I've also used KeyPay and the other versions of MYOB and that sort of thing as well, and I'm sort of just looking at a few different things at the moment in my own time as well, just to make sure I'm on top of how because I am part of a bookkeepers group. It's important to keep on top of stuff. So yeah,
and I think that brings a lot more probably awareness of
what's
other solutions in the market, being part of that bookkeeping group. And do VSI have a strategy to move to cloud generally, and if so, is there a time frame around that?
We have recently had another discussion on this topic, which is a bit of a thrill for me because we're currently on DOS for all of our the rest of everything that has to be done, and so yeah, we have now got a strategy to move forward so that we get out of ancient technology and into something a bit more current. So I'm a bit excited. Yes.
Great. And I guess circling back to Exo, what were the restrictions that you found with using Exo?
It was mostly in reporting. So for doing the monthly reports that I needed to do for the accountant and the senior, like the CEO and the GM, I needed to go into each data set to do my reports and then join them all together into one, which meant heavy use of Excel. Not that I mind, I love Excel, but the advantage of Advanced is that it's all there in one report. So if I use export it now to Excel, all I'm doing is really just adding a bit of color or maybe making the font a bit larger. That's about it. So it's been brilliant for that. So and it makes it easier for me to edit the report too and add in extra detail, like say maybe one branch had staff leave and more staff come on, that sort of thing. So yeah, no, it's been good for me. Yeah.
That's good. And were you able to work remotely?
No. So that was the other issue. And it's lucky I just don't get sick very often, and I didn't come down with COVID. So yeah, it was a bit of an issue because our server is quite old. Logging in from home is a bit of a ordeal. So yeah.
Makes sense. Thanks, Fiona.
Yeah.
And so what influenced VSI to move to a cloud payroll, and in particular advanced payroll?
Well, I wanted to move to a cloud to make it more flexible, and I think, and I must admit, I was resistant to the whole cloud thing to begin with. You know, being aware of privacy issues and our responsibility as payroll people with that data that we have access and control of. But, you know, as we learn more and as things advance, we became more confident with the cloud. And then when we had to upgrade for SP, single touch payroll phase 2, and the more I learned about phase 2 and where it's heading, so at the moment, phase 2 is reporting to the ATO and Services Australia. So, but it is heading to Fair Work as well. So it just made sense to update the software to something that was more flexible, and we had more control over what was being reported. And you know, Exo's got a lifespan, so why not just go now? And that was what I said to the boss. We have a choice. We can just update Exo, and that will be fine. But at some point, we are going to have to move to cloud anyway. And moving to cloud means that if I go on holidays and we need to do a pay run or terminate someone, I can still do it, right? So that
From
was
the pool
for me
lounge.
was the big plus. Yeah. Or I could work from home maybe one day when I'm getting too old to come into work. You know, it did make it more flexible, and it's the way of the future. So yeah, and as we were discussing yesterday in our strategy meeting moving forward, you know, is it worthwhile having a server anymore, an in-house server, or do you move to the cloud? Because the liabilities then are with the people who have the cloud, not the on-site server. So yeah, I think having more, we have to sometimes, as payroll people and finance professionals, sometimes it's up to us to take that step and be aware of what's out there. And yeah.
Very good. With implementation, so implementing a new payroll product is a process. So you've got scoping discussions, the software needs to be configured, you've got data to bring across, you've got training and testing to do. So what was your experience in moving across from Exo?
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Tarek was fantastic. He, because I get frustrated with myself and I want to be perfect at everything all the time, and which is just not realistic. But I found that one thing I did to save time for myself was, because Tarek needed me to input a certain amount of information, and I just used my STP files. So, because all the information I needed was there, so I just exported them down to Excel, and then I could literally cut and paste that information across to Advance as Tarek asked me to do for certain things. And I already had an Excel sheet with my super information in it because I use it to cross-check against. I cross-check everything. So it was pretty easy, really. The main thing that holds me up at the moment is because I'm time poor, trying to do everything that I do, I rush instead of breathe, right? So that's the one thing I would say to anyone. Don't be afraid of the change, but remember to breathe, because I will make silly mistakes and then I'll have to, Tarek, what have I done? Sort of thing. And like I asked him a question yesterday, and all I'd done was missed one thing I had to do, because the setup of new employees is different, and it's just, I had to rework some of my processes too that I did, because things are just slightly different. They're not incredibly different. It's just about changing your processes and how you do them, and which is always good to do anyway.
Correct.
So,
and payroll being a critical thing to be pretty much right to the cent for each employee, because it's basically what the employees are being paid, is something we approach, as an old boss of mine used to say, like porcupines make love, carefully.
I like that. Yes. Yes.
So how long did the process take to from start to go live?
It was less than a month. It wasn't long. I certainly wasn't stressed by the actual setup process. And the only stress that comes in now is my mistakes, because I'm still in that resistance to change mode. I'm, going to do things the way I used to do them, and remembering, no, I do it this way now. So I've got my notes in hand and I'm busy editing them as I go. And each time gets easier and easier and easier. So, yeah.
And there's always the odd process that doesn't happen very often, like a redundancy or an unusual,
yes,
tax situation.
We are trying to be more flexible with our staff too. So, have it with the retail staff, some of them are casual, then we've got the part-timers and then the full-timers, and retail staff come and go pretty rapidly, particularly at the moment. So it's, yeah, I'm learning fast. So, yeah. Very
good. And so what benefits would you say VSI have experienced so far?
Definitely the reporting's been good. The fact that it's more flexible now for me. And I think it's helped visually for everyone to see the advantages of moving to cloud and a more up-to-date program too. So, yeah.
And overall, how does Advanced Payroll compare to Exo Payroll?
Look, excellent, absolutely excellent, because it's reduced my time particularly for my reporting side of things, and I can see once and if I have a like say one branch doesn't have any changes, it's just standard salary, easy peasy, done so quickly. So it's just where once I get more familiar with it and stop doing things that slow myself down, basically, I get things done much faster. It's just still that going into automatic mode and going to do things too fast. So, yeah. But many advantages so far.
Yeah, good feedback. Thanks, Fiona. And a couple of things that I think you know about but perhaps haven't done is employee self-service is available out of the box with Advanced, so employees can do leave requests, approvals, change details, get pay slips. And a couple of things you may not know yet, because you might not have been through that cycle. End of year tax tables, no upgrade required, because the tax tables are upgraded in the cloud automatically. And the third one is onboarding is expected to be a standard part of the payroll product in about the next quarter. So a new hire will be able to onboard themselves either on a mobile app or a browser. And
that I'm very excited about. Yeah, no, I'm very excited about that, because the bookkeeping association that I'm with and the group that I attend every month, we talk a lot about that onboarding, because that is an area where we are exposed to privacy issues, and with everyone looking at privacy at the moment, and the fines that a business can get, just even with things like tax file numbers. So having that onboarding where they're onboarding themselves, and you're not relying on mail, and you're not relying on email in particular, because email is the biggest exposure point. That's very exciting. Very exciting. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for your time, Fiona. Really appreciate you joining us today, and glad you've had a good experience with Advanced Payroll so far.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Morgan. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have Grant McIntyre. Grant is Director with Secure Internet Storage Solutions, or Secure ISS, as we call them. Very topical subject being data security and disaster recovery. So over to you, Grant.
Oh, thank you very much, Al. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, if we go to the next slide. Thank you. Just to give you a quick overview, Secure ISS was established in 2016, and we offer a full range of cybersecurity solutions. So we go right from the beginning, which is assessment, right through to monitoring and detection. And we run our own SOC operation on the Gold Coast as well, which is 24/7, and that's also ISO certified to 27001. And we have very strong relationships with IBM and SentinelOne, which are one of the top technical security softwares in the world. And we also we run our cloud services as well. So we have two arms to our business. We have the cybersecurity and the cloud services. And the cloud services include private cloud, which we run. We have 2 data centers, and then you have hybrid cloud, and you can have public cloud services. So that gives you a quick overview of what we do. So we've been experienced, we've been in the industry a long time. So we'll just give you a quick overview of what you should be trying to look at as you move forward on your cybersecurity. Now this one here is, Bothma does the Institute does their surveys every year, and they've done a survey again this year of 3,600 interviews, and they've picked on 550 breaches around the world in 17 countries and regions to give people an idea of what the cost of breaches are. Now this is all done in US dollars, of course, because that's the world currency. And these dollar terms here, you're seeing it as millions, okay? So as we work down the scale, basically email compromise is one of the major ones. The next major issue with cybersecurity is phishing attacks, where you get a phishing attack on your emails coming through. And then you have the third one is vulnerability in third-party software, where patching hasn't been done or other things haven't been updated. Then you have the next one down would be your stolen and compromised credentials. Then you have malicious insider attacks, where one of your staff has done something that they shouldn't be doing. You can also have cloud misconfigurations, where the tech people on the cloud have made a mistake. You have social engineering, where people have impersonated your emails. You have physical security compromise, where somebody's actually broken in. And then you have accidental data loss or lost equipment, which causes issues as well. And then you can have technical misconfigurations on systems. Now each one of those is quite expensive to rectify, and the larger the organization, the more cost involved. Can we go to the next slide now, Morgan, please? Okay, so when you come to cybersecurity, the key questions you need to ask yourself is, where's your pot of gold? Where is all the sensitive data that you need to keep protected? Okay, that's the first thought. Now the next one from there is, who inside your organization has access to the data? And how do you classify your data and operations in terms of cybersecurity? So they're the considerations you really, from an organizational point of view, you need to look at. And then once you've done that, you can start looking at what preventative controls are in place to deter threat actors. We call them threat actors, but cyber criminals. What detection mechanisms do you have in place to detect it if you're having an attack or somebody's trying to get in? what response processes and mechanisms are in place to respond to it, and what processes and mechanisms are in place to respond to malicious activities. The other thing you should consider is investing in having a look at whether any information has already been taken and it's on the dark web. And then from a company point of view, you must look at setting up an instant response plan, which is clearly documented, articulated and tested, so that staff are all aware of what should be happening. So they're the key questions that you need to consider when you're looking at cybersecurity. So what we'll do is go through the next screen. Okay, so basically you have three major areas that you need to look at, and that's your people, your processes, and your technology. So for your people, which are quite important because that's where a lot of the issues and mistakes happen with cybersecurity. So they need to be cyber aware of what can happen. They need to have responsibility. So they're responsible and they're locked down to areas that they can have access to. And they need to have training and exercises so they get an understanding of what can happen by just doing everyday things that you think there's no consequence to. Clicking on an email or answering a question or doing something else that's not quite correct. Then from a company point of view, you've got to have your processes. You have to have risk assessments. You've got to have data governance frameworks. You have to have a business continuity plan, so you have disaster recovery and backups, for example. You should be looking at cyber insurance now these days, and cyber resilience and incident response. And that includes third parties that you deal with, okay? From a technology point of view, you should have mitigating and preventive controls in place, and you should have detection technologies in place. So the mitigating controls basically are, if you're in the cloud, it should be a minimum of multi-factor authentication, plus other security. And from a detection point of view, you should be able to have detection software across that stack that will detect if somebody's trying to get in there or break in, so that they can be nullified at the point before your data actually gets stolen. So that's the technology point of view. Can we go through to the next slide? Okay, so what you have is an in-depth defense security picture here, basically. So at the center of this is your data, which is your sensitive data or any data that you control, because a lot of that will be your IP, which is extremely important to your businesses. Okay, so there's different levels that we have here just to give people an idea of how security hangs together. So if you start at the bottom, you have your users and servers. So you have endpoints like PCs and laptops and those sorts of things. Now, on those, currently you would have some sort of antivirus. Now that's okay, but you should be now looking at the next gen AV systems, right? Like Sentinel-1. Now what Sentinel-1 will do, say for example, you get an encryption on your system, we can actually go in behind the scenes and still get that operational for you. It will also notify us if somebody's done something. It will also flag the user that there's an issue on their system. It's very, very sophisticated endpoint security, which is the next generation. Then you must have patching management. Now, patching management is basically taking all the errors out of the system and updating your software. And then you should have application whitelisting, which is so that people have access to those things and block everything else. Then you have perimeter protections, for example, the next one up, which is your application controls. You have put email gateways across your emails, have VPNs, and have content filters. Make sure your staff are trained in cybersecurity awareness training. Now, you should also do vulnerabilities on your system, where your system is scanned for vulnerabilities to make sure that everything's up to date and that you don't have vulnerabilities where people can actually go in without your knowledge. Then you should be looking at monitoring systems such as SIEMs, which will be intrusion detection. You should also be looking at privileged account management, where you lock your users down so they can only access information that they're allowed to access without getting into information they're not allowed to access. Then you need to have very good external network security these days. And you need to have good policies and managements and audits in place. If you're using cloud services, of course, multi-factor authentication and identity solutions. And then you should also have very good backups and disaster recovery solutions in place. So that gives you some sort of idea of what's required when you go into cybersecurity and work through what has to happen. So it's quite a complex, and especially now it's getting a lot more complex because the criminals are getting a lot more sophisticated and smarter, and they're doing a lot more things. So this is an evolving thing, and it changes daily for us. So we have to keep up with the technology and the services coming through and recommendations to our clients. Can we go through to the next one, Morgan, if you don't mind? Okay, so basically from our point of view, because we offer these particular services, this gives you an idea of services that are available for cybersecurity, okay? So if you look at when you're assessing things at the front end, you have penetrations testing, which basically is a team coming in and attacking your network to see if they can break in and get information out. Okay, so it picks up the vulnerabilities at that point. And then you do phishing attacks as an exercise. They're not real attacks, but they're phishing exercises to see how skilled your staff are at picking up things. And also social engineering, where we social engineer emails, for example. So to see how sophisticated and up to date they are on assessing whether an email is a real email from that person or it's not a real email from that person. Okay. Then you have security posture assessments and vulnerability assessments. So a vulnerability assessment is basically scanning all your equipment to make sure there's no vulnerabilities, patching's up to date, other things are done, there's no vulnerabilities in the software that you're using, things like that. Then you go to security strategies. So you're assessing and managing your security risk. You have governance and risk compliance that you have to keep up to date and have to be on top of. You have information security management systems so that everything is controlled and documented. Then when you come down through the cycles, you have monitoring detection response, which is what a SIEM is, and that's what we run through our SOC center. So basically that's intrusion detection, so that lets us know if somebody's trying to break in, and there's 3 or 4 different classifications as to priorities on that, and a P1 is the top one. Now that can be in a managed system where it's run through our SOC and you just pay a monthly fee for it, or you can have your own SIEM system if you're running all your own IT people, or you can have a managed one where you have a SIEM and then you have your local IT person that gets notified if there's an issue so they can try and stop that issue at that point. Then from the point security solutions, which is basically your staff, your PCs, all of those things.
What, 1 minute remaining?
Yep. Okay. Sorry. 1 minute. So you have cybersecurity training and so on, and endpoint and cloud security, email gateways and so on, identity assessment and backup. Can we go to the next slide? Right. So basically, your 5 top security recommendations are: you should be looking at adapting as a zero trust model, invest in detection and response technologies, protect sensitive data on-premise and cloud, use tools to help protect, monitor endpoints, and create and test resilience test playbooks. That's our recommendations. Well, thank you very much for your time this morning. And
Thank you
I'll
very
hand
much,
back, Ben.
Grant. Thank you. I appreciate the presentation from you, and I'll add to that briefly that Secure ISS provide hosting for a number of our existing Exo customers.
Yes, we do.
And over the years we've been dealing with Exo, we have had a number of customers with on-premise solutions have crypto attacks, some of which have been very disruptive and costly to them. None of our customers on Secure ISS have ever had an outage due to any crypto or any other attack. So good segue into our next presenter. If you can go next slide. Thanks, Morgan, because part of what Mark is going to talk about also relates to fraud prevention, but in a different way. So Mark Stafford, Director of Sales at Trailed, thanks for joining us, and over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Al. Good to be with you all. So look, jumping into today, just to give you a bit of food for thought, as we've been chatting with quite a few Exo users over the past 3 months, one of the things that we find that in those discussions that everyone can agree on is that paying bills is a bit of a drag, and paying business bills is even worse. There's more of them, they're more complex, and let's just say not everyone in the business gives it the same amount of attention as, say, a CFO, finance team, or managing director would. So possibly tell me how you can relate to this story. A large agricultural company over in WA who supplies chicken to Coles and Woolies, that sort of thing. They had hundreds, if not thousands, of invoices coming in each week, and they had a dedicated AP clerk because their process was manual. Their reasons seemed sound. They were wanted to slow down the process, make sure that everyone was diligent, and make sure there wasn't any unnecessary leakage through lazy approvals or error. But here's how each day went. Stack of invoices would come in, the clerk would sort through them, check if there's any purchase orders, make sure that they attach the purchase receipt. Some would match, some would need more approval, and some would be completely off and need to go back to the supplier. Forward on the invoices to the divisional heads, mark the important ones as urgent, follow up on last week's invoices to find that despite query requests, most haven't been actioned, so send out some reminders. Then notice how many pay on time discounts have been missed and sort of get a sense of the eye roll from colleagues as they seem to think the accounts team is always nagging them. But then the job's not done because onto the approved invoices. These still need to get into the system, so grab them one by one, start punching them in, hoping you're doing it accurately, but quickly, but accurately. Tag up the supplier, make sure the payment details haven't changed, make sure the payment terms are still the agreed terms and not been adjusted by the supplier, connect the purchase order, upload a copy of the invoice, all done so quickly, now you're worried that it's not accurate, so have a team member double check. Finally, onto making payment, prepare the payment file, spot check the payment file, authorize double signature in the bank, hopefully before any late fees kick in. An absolute hassle. Now, if this, just on to the next slide, Morgan. Now, if this sounds like an exaggeration, a recent AP Now survey actually found that 71% of businesses are actually having issues either with slow invoice approvals or matching their purchase orders to the invoice. And a staggering more than half of businesses are still processing their invoices manually. Now, the straw that broke the camel's back for our agricultural friends in WA is when they unknowingly processed a $20,000 invoice that had been compromised on the way into the business. In that overwhelm of their manual process, things got missed, checks dropped off, and the process actually started to work against them. By the time they had realised the error, the funds had been transferred overseas multiple times and the money wasn't coming back. On to the next. Thanks, Morgan. Now, some of the stats that we have are pretty eye-watering, and it's data security is something that's been pretty topical in the news of late, but certainly business email compromise specifically is not something that's uncommon, even in the isolated lands of Perth. And while companies like Coles, Google, Facebook, who have all had incidences, can absorb the loss, for smaller companies, it's not quite as simple. In Australia alone, the cost of invoice fraud and business email compromise was estimated at around $896 million, with only 1 in 7 businesses actually reporting their incident. And with the cost of those incidences being up around $100,000, the impact is pretty significant. Now, banks are known for stopping and reimbursing even the smallest amount of fraud on your credit cards, but when it comes to your business payments, the responsibility and costs sit solely with you and your business. So it's understandable. Many businesses try to protect themselves through manual processes and diligent reviews, but this is slow, time intensive, and where mistakes get made and missed. So with more and more incidents occurring, it pays to actually be proactive in identifying risks and flagging them well before payments are made or get anywhere near the bank. Now, with our deep integration into MYOB Exo, we believe at Trailed that we can help manage this balance between AP efficiency and payment security. Just on to the next, Morgan. Now, with any add-on, there's always an investment discussion to be had, but fortunately, the ROI for AP automation is simple. The ATO reports that it costs anywhere from $27 to $30 to process a PDF invoice manually, taking into account all those staffing costs, processing time, data entry, and so on. And Trailed, we approximate that we get that cost down to savings of about $20 per invoice. So an average business processing around 300 bills per month can look to save anywhere up to sort of $72,000 in those overhead costs just by automating that process. So rather than spending that time on manual back-end processes, what Trailed has been helping businesses do is actually take that time back, remove a lot of the hassle, but in doing so, protect those payments along the way. So happy to hang around for any sort of questions. And of course, if you want to learn more about any of those stats or about Trailed specifically, you can reach out to myself or your Momentum consultant.
Thanks very much, Mark. Short and sharp. And I probably add a couple of things to that. So MYOB have a website called the MYOB App Marketplace. And I'm going to post into the chat the URL to the Trailed placeholder in the App Marketplace. I'm going to place in the chat a placeholder for all integrated products that integrate with Exo. And one more thing that I do want to point out, this is circling back to Jennifer's training, is often people aren't aware of the Exo Education Centre. In your Exo business application on the far right-hand side, there's an icon for it, but it's also a URL. And that's where you can see all the release notes for latest versions of MYOB Exo, as well as training videos and a bunch of other things. So just a quick wrap up from me and to finish off on Mark from Trailed. One thing that Trailed does very well, so it obviously does OCR scanning of accounts payable invoices, freeway matching them to purchase orders and receipts, routing them through an approval process where needed. Those transactions can be expense related, inventory related, job related, doesn't matter. And in addition to that, it scans the bank details on the PDF invoice that's been emailed to you and compares them to historical records, including the bank details for your supplier, but also across their entire database to tell you whether there's a potential fraud event happening. And it does the same thing again when you go to pay your supplier and produce the ABA file. So it's a lot more than just an accounts payable processing option. So thank you everybody for attending. We hope you got a lot of information from today's session. Just a quick wrap up. We had Madaleen from MYOB giving us an update on Exo and MYOB generally. We had Ian, our service delivery manager, presenting on our approach to our different services that we offer. We had Jen doing a great training session on 5 or 6 key features of Exo that you may not have been familiar with. David on CRM best practice, very thorough presentation, introduced you to our growing Exo team and very experienced Exo team. We had a chat to Fiona from VSI about her experience with moving to advanced cloud payroll. And then we wrapped it up with Grant from Secure ISS on data data security, cyber security, and Mark from Trail. So happy to take any questions. Feel free to pop them in the chat or unmute your microphone, turn your camera on, and we can have a chat. Otherwise, thank you for attending.